We're now going to go back to, or go down to Senate Bill 5795, implementing year-round Pacific Standard Time, and let our two senators talk about their bill, and then we'll go back to this one. So is that Danielle?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, for the record, Danielle Creech, staff to the committee. Before you is proposed substitute bill 5795 relating to implementing year-round Pacific Standard Time. By way of background, in 2019, the legislature passed Substitute House Bill 1196, authorizing the state to observe daylight saving time year-round if authorized by the U.S. Congress. Since that time, 19 states have passed legislation or resolutions supporting year-round daylight saving time. To date, the U.S. Congress has not amended federal law to authorize state observance of daylight saving time year-round. The bill before you establishes that the state of Washington will observe Pacific Standard Time year-round, beginning on November 4th of this year. The bill also stipulates that if authorized by U.S. Congress, the state will instead observe daylight saving time year-round. There is a fiscal note ordered, but is not yet available, and with that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Senator Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Danielle, I just want to make sure I understand this. So if we went to standard time, it would be an hour earlier in the morning with more daylight, but we will lose an hour of daylight in the evening, the most likely scenario. Is that how, do I understand that correctly?
Senator Valdez, yes, so that would apply to the time of year that we're now observing daylight saving time, so that would be in the summer.
So if this were adopted, gaining an hour of daylight in the morning, but losing an hour of daylight in the evening is the most likely scenario?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Further questions? I will tell the two sponsors that the chair is thinking of an amendment, which we'll probably offer. I don't know if we talked to you about it or not, but to put an amendment in that if the Congress ever acts on daylight saving time, that we would revert to full-time daylight time.
If I might.
Go ahead. It's all yours.
Okay. Well, thank
Senator
you.
Padden.
Thank you so much, Chairman Hunt. Actually, we're having a hearing on the substitute that incorporates your amendment that Senator Wilson has presented. But I thank you so much for hearing the bill. And for the record, I'm State Senator Mike Padden from the 4th Legislative District. And you know, folks, one thing that I think most people agree on, it's the dislike of moving their clocks backward and forward, spring forward, fall back. We've done that now 8 times since and thank you for your help, all of us that were here in 2019 voted for year-round daylight time. And I will say that our U.S. Senator Patty Murray and Senator Marco Rubio from Florida have pushed that in 2022 through the U.S. Senate. But the House has not acted, and from all indications has no intention of acting in the foreseeable future. So what we want to do is ditch the switch. We're tired of that switch, and we like to go to a new standard. I think our time has come for that. So people can have some certainty in the time of the year. I mean, there have been studies that have connected several health problems with switching back and forth between standard and daylight time is what we do now, including greater risks of heart attacks, more workplace injuries, and a number of things. But I just think the rhythms of life go better if we're on some permanent, be it daylight or standard time. And I think that's what most people would like to see. Several organizations support permanent standard time: the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, American Medical Association, the National Sleep Foundation, Sleep Research Society, and the Society for the Research on Biological Rhythms. And Mr. Chair, when I was speaking to you and asking you to hold a hearing, I mentioned another group that's probably not too well known, but they're the people that operate the sundials. So anyway, I'm also happy to have this. We just heard from our Lieutenant Governor on, civic health, and here in the Senate, we have a lot of this. I'm very happy to have a co-sponsor who I must say, philosophically, politically, we're probably somewhat far apart, but here we are together supporting this bill. Thank you very much.
So is there a National Association of Sundial Operators?
Well, I heard there is, but I'm checking that out,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Senator,
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Thank you, Chair Hunt, for hearing this bill. My name is Manka Dhingra, and I proudly represent the 45th Legislative District. It is an honor to be here in front of all of you and to join my good colleague on this bill. I love that we're following the civic health discussion around here because I think in the Senate we actually have a lot of it. I just want to urge all of you to please pass this bill. I think the substitute bill is the right policy for the state. In 2019, we hoped that Congress would act and we would be on permanent daylight savings time, and that has not happened. And I agree with Senator Padden that it's time to ditch the switch. I think the moving back and forth is very detrimental to individuals' health, especially in the Pacific Northwest, given how far north we are. And so I'm here just to join Senator Padden in support of this legislation. Thank you.
thank you. Who's done that? You, Senator Dozier?
No, I was letting him know that I wanted to ask a question.
Go ahead,
Oh,
please.
thank you very much. Your choice between daylight and standard, why did you choose standard? I'll give my preference, but I want to hear why you chose standard.
Well, actually, we chose daylight in 2019. And
Okay.
and if Congress had acted, we wouldn't be here with this bill. But they've gone, like I say, 4 years. The U.S. Senate acted,
Okay.
House is not, and all indications are they're not going to. The bill is in my Congresswoman's committee, which she chairs. She supports it, but her office has told me there just isn't the support in the House to get the bill out. So we've waited and waited and waited, and people are getting tired of the switch. So in lieu of not adopting the daylight time, we are going to permanent standard. Now, I've heard from people on both sides of that, but again, it's the switch that we're trying to get rid of.
Right, okay. I'd probably have a lot more support if it was daylight, being in
Yes.
agriculture, having those longer days during the
Right.
time that we do our harvests and everything. We don't always get started
Right.
as early in the mornings, and it helps to have those longer
Yeah.
daylight hours. So
Well, if that happens.
That was my question.
Yeah, if that happens, I mean, under the bill that we have, we will go to daylight if
I
Congress
might have been able to
acts.
wrap my arms around you, Senator
Yeah.
Padden, with the other way, but.
Yeah.
So, Senator, I'll just add, moving to standard standard time, we don't need Congress to act, and that's why this is the alternative.
Okay,
we're
that's
with.
okay. You answered the question.
With daylight savings, we need Congress to act.
I understand.
And so this is why the preference was for daylight savings, but because Congress has not acted, we're saying, okay, instead of going back and forth every year, let's just go to permanent, standard, sorry, and then when Congress acts, we will go to daylight. So I think the state has voted and shown their preference for daylight savings time. We're just saying we're tired of waiting and switching back and forth, and so let's go with standard since it does not need anyone else's approval, just ours, and we have the backup plan on switching to daylight when Congress finally decides to act.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just before I do that, I pulled up a map here. Pacific time zone, those who don't know, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, California, except for one portion of eastern Oregon, which is on Mountain Time, and one portion of northern Idaho, which is on Pacific Time. So if we did this, then Spokane and Coeur d'Alene would be in different time zones.
Well, let me just say, I'm glad you brought that up, Senator Hunt, because I've been working with legislators from Idaho and Oregon and California. And Nevada, I don't think has a session this year, but those three states all have members of the legislature working on the same thing we are. So hopefully we'll see a movement on this that will incorporate the other states in our time zone.
We could fly from Seattle at 8 o'clock and arrive in Portland at 7 o'clock. Senator Fortunato.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator Padden and Dhingra. What effect will this have on Senate time?
We will be as efficient as we always are.
Senator Cooterer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real briefly, wouldn't it make sense to do an interstate compact on this? I mean, would you be, have a clause in ours that if the other states don't do it, ours doesn't take effect, or ours takes
Yeah.
effect when they
Well, you could, but I mean, that, you still got the risk of the switch. I understand some Canadian provinces have done that. I believe British Columbia said if we ever go to permanent year-round daylight time, they will too. But we have two states that are on permanent standard time right now, Hawaii and Arizona. And they've been on it for some time, and it seems to have worked well for them.
Senator Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To either one of you, Senator Padden or Senator Dhingra, I'm just looking at a chart that I also pulled up. Thank you, Danielle, for sending me this chart. In standard time, during the summer, our sunset would be 8:11 p.m. And daylight time right now in summer is 9:11 p.m. So we lose that hour. Washington, as you know, is a very recreational state. Folks like to be outdoors, out and about, especially in the summer with so many things that we do. Senator Padden, I mean, you represent Eastern Washington. You know that I'm originally from Eastern Washington, who they thoroughly enjoy being outdoors in the summer. So how do you react or perhaps explain how folks might react to perhaps losing an hour of that daylight in the summertime?
I agree with you, Senator Valdez, and I've historically done a lot with American Legion Baseball and had a lot of run baseball tournaments. And I love it when the athletes, whether it's baseball, softball, whatever, the sport can play later in the day, and you don't have to go to fields with lights and everything. But again, we favor permanent year-round time, but that's not the choice. The choice right now is the switching back and forth all the time, and what that does in March and November, you have the switches. So we want to get rid of that switch, and maybe that'll encourage, and if these other states do something, maybe that'll encourage Congress, I don't know. But if not, we'll still have permanent time, and I think we can adjust to that. Our preference would be what you want, yeah.
And if I may quickly add, Senator Valdez, I know we're having a lighthearted conversation. There are real health consequences to us switching twice a year. There are issues with sleep patterns. There are issues with depression. This is not going to solve seasonal depression for sure. This is not a solution to that. But there is something to be said about how our body reacts to artificially changing times twice a year. And I think it is important to make sure that a body rhythm is consistent for extended periods of time.
I know there's lots of stories we could tell, but yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let's go back to 8414. Okay, and that will conclude the hearing on Senate Concurrent Resolution 8414, and we will go back to Senate Bill 5795 and let the sun shine in, so to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 9 people who have signed in to testify, some in person and some remote. We're going to start with a couple of in person. We're going to start with Horacio de la Iglesia. And then we're going to go to Peter Godlewski. Did I get that right? Sorry, I apologize, Peter. Then we will go to remote. I'm sorry, then we go to Damon Darley, who's here in person, is that correct? You'll be after these two, and then we will go to some in remote.
All right, whoever's ready, please proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and committee. My name is Horacio de la Iglesia. And I'm here to testify in favor of Bill 5795. I'm a resident of Seattle, and I'm also a professor of biology at the University of Washington, Seattle. And I teach and do research specifically in sleep and circadian rhythms. I am the current president of the Society for Research on Biological Rhythms. And I've been doing research on sleep on Washingtonians, specifically in Seattle, people living in Seattle for the last 10 years and studying how daylight influences their sleep, their quality and timing of sleep. I should say that my position on support of permanent standard time is backed up by the vast majority of all researchers doing sleep and circadian rhythms research in the world, but also by all the societies, including the one that I'm the president of, as we heard before when the bill was presented. So why are sleep experts in favor of permanent standard time? Well, it turns out that, first of all, we know that switching back and forth is not good for your health. It also doesn't have any economic benefits, and it turns out that specifically switching from standard time to daylight saving time on a yearly basis is particularly bad for health and increases not only adverse health outcomes, but also accidents. Why is that? Well, it turns out that standard time is actually our natural solar time. That is the time at which at noon the sun is at its highest position on the sky, unlike what happens with permanent daylight savings time. And that's very beneficial for us because humans still use daylight to align their sleep and daily activities. For instance, your timing of work and school. So it turns out that for Washingtonians, and particularly for those that live on the westernmost part of the time zone, it's highly beneficial to be in permanent standard time. This is particularly true for young people and adolescents who have a delayed circadian clock and therefore struggle to get out of bed on every morning. And in general, this is why we support permanent standard time and not specifically permanent daylight savings times. We are adamantly opposed to permanent daylight savings time. And this is because it will be particularly detrimental for your health in the winter. And I can go over some examples of how physical and mental health will be affected under permanent daylight savings time if you want to during the question section. So with that, I'd like to urge you to vote for Bill 5795 for permanent standard time and set the time straight for Washingtonians for once and for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Hunt, members of the committee. For the record, Peter Godlewski with the Association of Washington Business signed in support this afternoon. Do appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony. I would start off by saying that we agree that there is a lot of opinion about whether daylight standard or daylight savings is the preferred outcome for everybody. I think the committee here has shown that as well this afternoon. But there is a poll from Monmouth University from last year that 65% of Americans do not like the switch. And that is the point at which AWB is testifying on this afternoon. The twice yearly switch creates challenges for our employees. Studies have shown that lethargy, distracted driving, and health impacts persist for up to a week after each switch. Additionally, the fiscal cost nationwide is in excess of $340 million every year with unnecessary loss of injury, business, and productivity. So this is a major issue from the employment perspective in terms of just added costs. We would also note that after Washington passed our bill in 2019, California and Oregon have both taken steps to align with Washington's standard. So there's every likelihood that they would do the same case if Washington passed this law. As we said, there are dueling opinions on whether or not people prefer standard or savings time, but our position is that we should go away with the switch. Since we can't wait for Congress to take action, and we have waited for the past 4 years to do so, our position is that this bill is the next best outcome. Please vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Come on up, and then we're going to get 4 in the queue who are remotely. That will be J. Pia, Vishesh Kapur, Steve Calandrillo, and Damon Darley.
Should I be here?
Yes, sir, please proceed.
I'm Damon Darley. I'm from Seattle. I want to thank the committee for listening to what I have to say. I'm not a public speaker. I'm extremely nervous, and I'm not going to read from a
And we don't bite.
prepared text.
We don't bite, so don't worry.
Oh, I know that, but I'm still nervous. So I want to speak against the bill. I think we need to take a more holistic look at the issue. Our daughter is a naturopathic physician that specializes in sleep, so I understand the issues there. You'll have probably be more severe issues around Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day that may be more severe. I suspect that they are, but I've not seen a comparison of the two. I have 2 primary issues. One is safety. At night, traffic accidents go up. It's especially true for pedestrians, bicyclists, and to some extent bus riders because they have to walk to and from and wait. Street crime goes up as soon as it's dark. And I guess I'd rather put up with a switch, which I don't like, than get hit by a truck. And then there's a lot of social issues involved. Quality of life. All studies show that the primary determinant of life expectancy and satisfaction involve recreation, exercise, and social content. I belong to a yacht club. My primary social contact outside the family is yachting. At 82, I'm still able, luckily, to sail my boat. I can sail by myself. I can sail with a crew. My yacht club has 18 Monday night races. They start April 15. The soonest we can get the crews out and the boats out is about 6:15. And because we have multiple classes, we have about 70 boats every Monday night, over 300 people participating. The last class starts at 7. On April 15th this year, sunset is exactly 8 o'clock. That's the same date we have our first race. If it was to change to standard time, that would be 7 o'clock, which is the same time our last class starts. And you can't have 70 boats wandering around Shilshole Bay in the dark. It's just not safe. So real darkness comes, if there's clouds, about 8:30, which is our cutoff time. And you have the same situation at the end of the season. 8 o'clock is sunset, daylight saving time for our last race in mid-August. So we would have to cancel probably 12 of our 18 races, which is a big deal. And there's another 12 clubs in Puget Sound, in the greater Seattle area. They run 18 clubs in Seattle area. They run between them 26 races that would be likely to be affected. So I personally would be damaged socially by this. And it's also a significant portion of my exercise. Sorry for a minute. There's also another issue. I'm 82, and as I said, I'm still physically pretty good, but my eyesight makes it so I really don't want to drive at night. So I don't go to board meetings. I don't go to dinner engagements. if I can avoid it because of I don't want to drive at night. So the sooner we get daylight saving time, the better my social life is, and the longer it lasts into the fall, the better it is. And there's a lot of other activities that have the same issues I'm having. Besides boating, there's gardening. People like to go out, and as Senator Dozer said, farming issues, bicyclists, hiking, after dinner walks, and all kinds of things that, flying your model airplanes for the airplane clubs. There's just a lot of issues. Flying real airplanes. I was a pilot at one, a professional pilot, and flying daytime is not the same thing as flying night. There's a lot of FAA regulations about flying at night that don't apply to daytime. So I would like to speak against it and argue that a holistic approach is justified, and if it is a holistic approach, you will not get rid of daylight saving time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Thanks for coming down today.
Have a good day.
Okay, we're now going remote, which will be Jay Pia, Vishesh Kapur, Steve Calandrillo, followed by Laura Prugh.
Hello, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. My name is Mr. JP. I am the president of the nonprofit Save Standard Time, 501c4, working across the country. I am the co-chair of the Coalition for Permanent Standard Time with our partners at the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, National Sleep Foundation, Society for Research on Biological Rhythms, and Sleep Research Society. I'm also a software engineer, grandson of farmers, an amateur astronomer. I'm here to ask for you to vote yes on SB 5795 and the clock change with permanent standard time. Permanent standard time is the real time defined by the sun's position in the sky. It is the honest time. It is the natural time. Some call it God's clock for its connection to nature. It balances the light fairly between the morning and the afternoon to benefit everyone equally. The doctors will tell you who are here testifying as well that it's the best clock for our mental health, our physical health, our safety while driving or working. It's best for our productivity, the economy. It's best for our children's education. There really is broad bipartisan consensus for this based on hundreds of studies and real-world experiments, the history of this. We've tried permanent standard time, and it's lasted for decades. We have it in Arizona and Hawaii, most nations on Earth. We've tried permanent daylight time. The last time we tried that, it actually cost lives. Children were getting killed, and we had to repeal it. There are this year more bills than ever for permanent. I beg your pardon?
Any questions?
This year there are more bills than ever for permanent standard time, including in Oregon and California. It is federally pre-approved by law, whereas permanent daylight time is not. And there was a 2022 poll in the Seattle Times finding that 72% of residents actually want standard time, only 17 wanted daylight time. Those who want more daylight after work, I would implore them simply to start their work days earlier rather than try to force everyone else into an unhealthy lifestyle. I'd be glad to take any questions you might have. Please vote yes on SB 5795, and thank you again very much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the interruption there.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Vishesh Kapur.
Yes, this is Vishesh Kapur. I trust everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senators. My name is Vishesh Kapur. I am a sleep medicine specialist and a professor of medicine at the University of Washington. I lead the sleep medicine program for the Division of Pulmonary Critical Care and Sleep Medicine. I am testifying in support of this bill, which would exempt the state of Washington from daylight savings time by implementing year-round Pacific Standard Time. I'm also a board of director of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine is the largest medical society representing sleep medicine clinicians. We have over 11,000 members. The mission of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine is to advance sleep care and enhance sleep health. Because the biannual clock change and daylight saving time have serious detrimental impacts on the health of Americans, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine has prioritized advocacy for permanent standard time. This is because the underlying biology is very clear. We have an internal biological clock that is set by sunlight. For optimal health, our behaviors such as sleep, work, physical activity, and eating should align with that internal clock. This alignment occurs when we follow standard time. When we don't follow standard time, there are harmful consequences. And there are two components to this. One is the twice yearly time change, especially that change from standard time to daylight savings time that happens in the spring causes an acute misalignment of behavior relative to our internal clock. Major effect of this change, this spring forward into daylight savings time, is reduced sleep duration. And we can also measure other changes that occur in the body, like increased heart rate and blood pressure and changes in immune function. And then there are more tangible health outcomes that occur during the switch, which is increases in heart attack, stroke, suicide, emergency room visits, motor vehicle accidents, and fatalities. Now, people have talked about staying in daylight savings time, and that's not the answer. Even several months after the springtime change, there continues to be sleep loss and a misalignment of the body clock, of activities with the body clock. And there was a recent trial of daylight saving time that occurred in 1973 during the oil crisis. This trial was very short-lived because waking up earlier in the wintertime, it means you have to wake up an hour earlier in the wintertime, was extremely unpopular. In addition, there were a number of traffic fatalities involving school-age children. And this led to the repeal of permanent daylight savings time by Congress after a single winter. So, daylight savings time, permanent daylight savings time would be a disaster, and it's been tried before. And if it had worked, they would have continued. On the other hand, there's universal support for permanent standard time among the medical organizations. So this includes societies such as the American Medical Association, my society, American Academy of Sleep Medicine, National Sleep Foundation, Sleep Research Society, World Sleep Society. And then there are other groups who are non-medical who also support standard time. These include the National PTA and the National Safety Council. One of the big advancements in terms of sleep has been delayed school start times that happen in Seattle, which have been very beneficial to children. So, permanent daylight savings time would undo that kind of a beneficial effect. So for those reasons, I urge you to support this bill, which will improve the health of Washington residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Steve Calandrillo, followed by R Prugh, to be followed by Victor Morris and Richard Simon.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. My name is Steve Calandrillo. I am very excited to be here. I am professor at the University of Washington, where I've been for 24 years. I teach contract law and law and medicine and law and economics, where I've been studying daylight saving time for the past 20 years or so. I testified in favor of Senator Honeyford's bill 4 years ago that was passed to go to permanent daylight saving time. I've testified in front of the U.S. Congress as well for the same thing. The Senate, as you know, approved it. The House is never going to actually act to approve it, and that's why we're here today. and you guys have proposed the permanent standard time result because at least that will allow you to ditch a switch. But I'm here to beg you not to make that mistake. Right now, we have 8 months of the year on daylight saving time. We have 4 months of the year on standard time. The reality is that the standard in our society today is actually daylight saving time, not standard time, because that's when most Americans, most Washingtonians choose to live their lives. We do not live by the sun anymore. It would be great. I would agree with JP and I would agree with Horacio de la Iglesia and all the sleep scientists if we actually lived by the sun. We didn't have electricity and we all went to sleep when the sun set and we all woke up when the sun rises. But if you pass this bill, the sunrise is going to be at 4 a.m. in June in Seattle. And I don't know very many people who wake up at 4 a.m. On the other hand, the sun sets at 9 or 10 p.m. in the summertime, right? Lots of people are still awake. But much, much more importantly, right now, January, some of the darkest days of the year, the sun is setting at 4:30 p.m. And the hour after that sunset, right, from 4:30 to 5:30, is now 2 to 3 times as fatal for bicyclists, pedestrians, and drivers as it was before we went to the switch to daylight, to standard time instead of daylight saving time. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree with all the great quotes. Ditch the switch. Everybody hates the switch. What people are really objecting to in those polls that Mr. P brought up is the switch itself. You're right. People don't like losing an hour of sleep. I have seen numbers of studies that show that. But it's not daylight saving time that they're objecting to. They're objecting to standard time. Nobody wants the sun to go down at 4:30 p.m. An extra hour of sunlight in the afternoon/evening would save 2 to 3 times more people per year in fatal car accidents, bicycle accidents, pedestrian accidents compared to standard time. There's more alcohol in people's bloodstreams in the evening commute. There's more drivers on the road. There's more children outdoors enjoying unsupervised play. People are rushing to get home from work. And guess what happens in darkness? Darkness kills. And darkness is 2 to 3 times more fatal at 5 p.m. than it is at 5 a.m. At 5 a.m., the morning commute, it's half as full as the evening commute. A lot of people are not awake at 5 a.m. God knows my children haven't seen 5 a.m. sunrise in forever. I don't know if you guys have. The reality is maybe half the population is still asleep then. The other reality is that 99% of the population is awake at 5 p.m. When you put the sun there, you benefit the great majority of the population. I will confess, I'm a utilitarian. I am trying to do the most good for the greatest number of people. There are trade-offs when you switch sun, right? Whether you have daylight saving time or whether you have standard time. There are pros and there are cons. Some people want sun in the morning, some people want in the evening. I'm simply advocating to put it in the part of the day when everybody is awake and benefiting from it. The studies out there, not to disagree with those sleep scientists out there, but mostly those studies are about the switch and the impact it has on health. If you look at the long run, the year, right, all of the costs and benefits over the year, 8 meta-studies by Cote and Markowitz out at Rutgers, by Susan Ferguson, by the National Safety Council, by the National Institute for Highway Safety, have concluded that hundreds more lives would be lost if we had permanent standard time compared to permanent daylight savings time. Again, more people are on the road, more people are getting hurt. By the way, the hundreds of fatalities translates into tens of thousands of more injuries.
Can you please wrap up your comments?
Sorry, Mike.
Can you please wrap up your comments?
Is my time up?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll wrap them up. Just want to advocate live save, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you so much for humoring me as I go along.
Sorry you weren't more enthusiastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then Laura Prugh, followed by Victor Morris and Richard Simon.
Hi. Yes. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I am also a professor at the University of Washington. I'm a professor of wildlife, and you may wonder why a wildlife professor has an interest in this issue. And I am opposed to the bill, and that's because it would be harmful to people and wildlife by increasing the number of deer-vehicle collisions. So that might be a consequence that you might not have thought about. But just over a year ago, my research group conducted a study of over 1 million deer-vehicle collisions across the U.S. That was published in the peer-reviewed journal Current Biology. And I'm going to focus on the Washington-specific statistics. So there are more than 28,000 deer vehicle collisions in Washington. And our analysis showed that under permanent standard time, the number of collisions would increase by 8%. So we would have 2,240 more deer vehicle collisions each year if this bill passes. And that means 220 more collisions per year where people are injured, and 1 to 2 more people would die each year in fatal crashes with deer. So the economic costs associated with these collisions would amount to $72.7 million every year, and that's just in the state of Washington. And this is because you're more than 14 times more likely to hit a deer in the 2 hours after dark than in the 2 hours before the dark. And standard time puts that evening rush hour after dark for much of the year, whereas in daylight savings time, it's in the daylight. And so the traffic volumes are much higher in the evening. So it's not balanced out by the additional morning light that you get under standard time. So some researchers have pointed out that standard time is better aligned with our circadian rhythms, and certainly getting more sleep is really good for our health. But the evidence that people get more sleep under standard time is fairly scarce and indirect. So the study that Dr. de la Iglesia referred to is a really interesting one that used the east and west sides of time zones as a proxy for getting an hour more shifted in the morning versus the daylight. And they found that people would get 19 minutes less sleep under like a daylight savings time than standard time. They valued the health benefits at $2 billion. So that sounds really substantial, but the added deer vehicle collisions under permanent standard time that our study calculated was valued at $2.2 billion nationwide. So those costs are actually higher than the costs of the health effects. So I like morning sunlight too, but we can't have it both ways. I would say that I am tired of the switch as well. I totally hear you, but I'm concerned that standard time is not actually the best way to lock the clock and could actually be worse than the switching back and forth because we're going to be hitting more deer. And so do we want to hit more deer or fewer deer? I think most of your constituents would want to hit fewer deer. And so I would encourage you to vote against this bill, to not support this bill, because I think it's ultimately bad for people and bad for wildlife in our state. Thank you.
Thank you. So Bambi would be opposed to the bill.
Bambi would hate this bill. Yes.
Rudolph. We can shine a light on it with that. Get me out of this. Go ahead.
I will. Victor Morris, followed by Richard Simon. Those are our last two.
Hello, my name is Victor Morris. I'm from Benton County, 16th Legislative District. And I am speaking, in support of this bill. I recently, about 3 months ago, retired from a 40-year career as an earth scientist at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory in Richland. And I specialized in fields of atmospheric sciences and climatology. During those 4 decades, I installed, operated, maintained, and managed scientific measurements from many meteorological and climatological instruments at many field sites all over the world. The switch back and forth between standard and daylight time can be a major nuisance, especially when collecting measurements over a period of several years or decades, and it can cause an apparent missing hour of data in March and an apparent duplicate hour of data in November if the site technician has forgotten to disable the daylight time feature from the local computer or the data acquisition system collecting the data. At at the U.S. Department of Energy's atmospheric observatories, we use the sun as a position and at its position of solar noon to align and calibrate several instruments that measure the incoming solar radiation. That would not be possible if the clocks were changed to daylight time. As at our observatories, the National Weather Service stations maintain their clocks on standard time year-round. The solar system is a very precise, finely tuned clock. It is our standard of timekeeping. And the sun, of course, is that standard, sets that standard. For someone accustomed to using the position of the sun and the shadows it casts to align instruments, I can certainly tell when I go outside during the months of daylight time that everything is shifted by 15 degrees. And the sundial in my backyard, yes, I am a sundial operator, is always 1 hour off during those months. I think I speak for many of my scientist colleagues, and I have heard from police officers and emergency room nurses that also do not like the shift to daylight standard time. There are good reasons it is called standard time, and I think we should keep that standard all year round. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Richard Simon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I retired 2 years ago. I'm a
Mr.
physician.
Simon, can you turn your camera on if you're able to?
I thought I had it on.
That's okay. Okay, please proceed.
Oh, there we go. I found it. Got it. There you go. Sorry about that. So I'm a retired physician. I retired 2 years ago. I went to Walla Walla High School, Whitman College, University of Chicago for medical school. Then my wife and I moved back to Walla Walla, where I practiced medicine for the last 41 years. In 1992, quite surreptitiously, I went into sleep medicine when Bill DeMint, the man who started the sleep program at Stanford University and is probably the father of all of sleep medicine, was driving through Walla Walla, came into my office, and we started a project to bring the diagnosis and treatment of sleep disorders into primary care. One of the points I wanted to make was the man who started most of clinical sleep medicine is actually from Washington State. He was born in Wenatchee, graduated from Wahi in 1947, and then the University of Washington. From 1992 to the present, I practiced internal medicine and sleep disorders medicine, and from 2005 to the present, exclusively sleep medicine. And I am startled by how little understanding there is of the importance of circadian rhythms in human performance as well as animal performance. It's grossly underestimated. We all know our teenagers stay up till 3 a.m, surfing the internet, et cetera, and we blame this all on the electronic devices. This is not true. The electronic devices certainly make this worse. But as we go through teenage years, we become night owls. So when we're born, we're morning larks, we become night owls, and as we age, get to be the age I am now, we become morning larks again. So our circadian preferences and our biological clock activity changes throughout life. Bright light, especially in the evening, makes us much more of a night owl. Makes it very hard to awaken in the morning. Bright light in the morning does the opposite. So what do we do with the daylight savings time is really quite simple. Is you're making us more of a night owl, which then makes it harder, especially if you're an adolescent, a teenager, or a young adult, to get up in time for school or to get up in time for work. So this leads to a couple of problems, one of them which is sleep deprivation and the associated consequences, which include suicide, suicidal thoughts, depression, academic dysfunction, tardiness, work absences. So when we have a workforce and a school force that typically is starting jobs very early in the morning, and we're going to change to daylight savings time, which is going to give us even less light in the morning, all of these issues are going to get worse. And that has been my clinical experience for the last 20 years, treating people with insomnia, which is really, in many cases, secondary to circadian misalignment. I would argue very strongly that we should go to Pacific Standard Time year-round for a lot of the reasons that have already been stated. I do want to say one thing I happen to agree with everybody on, though, is I think it is particularly dangerous from a health point of view to shift back and forth, back and forth. Heart attacks, atrial fibrillation, strokes increase. But what's interesting about that is they increased at that shift, whether it's in the spring or the fall. They increase both switches. Car accidents, on the other hand, increase as we lose the hour of sleep for a day or two, and they actually decrease for a day or two when we gain an hour of sleep. So this whole issue is complicated by effects on our biological clocks, the effects they have on all of the organs in our body, but also complicating it by the fact that circadian misalignment also leads to a degree of sleep deprivation. So I would very strongly, for scientific reasons and social reasons, support going to standard time permanently. Now, I heard the comment that for farming, we like the night times. Well, what I do right now in retirement is pretty much play golf with a bunch of retired farmers. And I know of no farmer, in my experience, that likes to stay up late at night. They all start their work very, very early in the morning. And most of them would prefer to have it be somewhat light when they actually start the work. So I would argue very strongly that the science supports staying on standard time. But certainly I would agree with everybody that the idea of switching back and forth, that's not a good thing. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, we had 22 signing in favor, 4 against, 0 as other.
All right, that will conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 5795. We now know more about daylight and standard time than we ever thought we needed to. So, and sunrise, yes. So